an agricultural reporter, rather, for the Wall Street Journal, and joins us now. Jacob, thanks for taking time this busy morning. Welcome to Big 550 KTRS here in St. Louis.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me.
Why is it that Monsanto was in play? What happened over the last couple of years? Somebody said yesterday it was unfathomable to think that Monsanto would have been bought just a few years ago.
Well, the funny thing is that in a sense, Monsanto put themselves in play. And what I mean by that is that you may recollect about a year and a half ago, Monsanto jumped out and surprised a lot of people with a bid to take over a company called Syngenta, which is a seed and pesticide company that's based in Switzerland. And they're about the same size as Monsanto, but they're a good match in the sense that their business, the bulk of it comes from pesticides, whereas Monsanto's, the bulk of it comes from seeds. And so Monsanto pitched that deal all last summer, and they just couldn't get Syngenta's board to come to the table and really sit down with them. So Monsanto dropped that. They looked at some other options, but in the meantime, what started to happen was you had some of the big competitors to Monsanto and Syngenta in the agricultural world, and I'm talking here Dow and DuPont, start to look around and say, well, this might not be such a bad idea doing a big merger right now because the farm economy, as you probably see, is not doing so hot. It still isn't. And Dow and DuPont do a merger. Syngenta winds up selling itself to a large Chinese chemical company, and that's in progress now. And in the midst of all this, Monsanto found itself without an obvious takeover target. But Bayer got into its head that maybe the idea makes sense too, and maybe they would rather just buy Monsanto. So they started these discussions back in May. It's taken them a while. They've kind of come in drips and drabs, but they've steadily increased the offer throughout, and here we are.
Yeah. Monsanto's price was $128, $129 a share. Monsanto's price has been higher than that in past years, has it not?
Well, the thing that Monsanto will look at here is what are their prospects going forward. And like we just talked about, the agricultural economy is really under pressure right now. And part of that has to do with the fact that there's been a lot of really good years in a row for crop production. So where that leaves Monsanto, and more importantly, Monsanto's investor owners, who are the ones who ultimately have to decide if this is a good deal or not, is that they have to look ahead and say, well, Bayer comes to us saying that our company is worth $128 a share. Now, prior to all of this, Monsanto's stock price was in the low 90s. And so they'll look at what Bayer brings here, and they'll look at their prospects on their own. And Monsanto's board went through this all summer and say, are we going to be able to get our stock up to $128 a share on our own? And Monsanto's board came to us, or came to the world with the decision this week that they think their future is best going with Bayer.
Yeah. You can't talk Monsanto without talking about Roundup. And some farmers have said, and some of the people we've talked to here have said that with all those patents starting to run out, Monsanto's lost their big edge, and so this was the next play for them.
Well, it's a funny thing when it comes to the patents. I mean, the glyphosate or Roundup has been off patent for quite a while, and I think it's been around 15 years or so. A lot of the profits have dwindled out of that. They still have a very robust business in the Roundup Ready biotechnology, the seed traits that enable the crops to withstand Roundup. But the point that you make is true in the sense that Roundup's not working as well as it once did, and Monsanto and some of its competitors, including Dow, are now right on the cusp of introducing a new generation of seed products that will produce plants that can withstand not just Roundup, but also these tougher chemicals that'll take out the weeds that Roundup can't get anymore. And so there's a little bit of this crop out there this year. There's going to be more next year. They need to still secure some approvals overseas to really be able to bring out some of the other products. Like there's a product called 2,4-D that's a herbicide that they want to pair with some of this. And so what you'll see is a proliferation of that sort of thing. But the challenge there is that for the farmers who are so strapped for cash right now and looking at another big harvest, they're going to have to decide, well, is it going to be worth my while to buy a Cadillac type of seed that'll have this new technology, or can I get by buying an old-fashioned, non-genetically engineered seed, apply all these old chemicals in different ways to go along with that, and potentially come out in a better place economically than going with the expensive seed.
Yeah, a lot of people forget about the farmers and the tough choices they have to make each and every spring when they decide to plant. Let's talk jobs, Jacob Bunge, our agricultural reporter with the Wall Street Journal. What do we know? Is Bayer going to move out of St. Louis, or are more jobs going to be flown into St. Louis? What do we know about the pairing of these two companies?
Well, Bayer's said all along that they're committed to maintaining a presence and a significant presence there in St. Louis, and how they describe it is that they envision St. Louis and some of Monsanto's campus remaining its global center for developing seeds. And that's been, as we talked about, the bulk of Monsanto's business for years, and so it makes sense. And Monsanto's been consolidating a bit more of its research functions there anyway. So they'll be doing the global seeds base there. They'll be doing, I believe, their North American commercial activities out of St. Louis as well. So the takeaway is that they're not going to fly the coop or anything like that. Now, there's doubtless going to be efficiencies if they close this deal that come with laying off people that are in duplicative administrative jobs, like they don't need two finance and investor relations departments, those sorts of things. Those are typically in any merger something that they look at as a way to reduce the overall costs, and that's hard to imagine that doesn't happen here. But the bulk of the research functions Bayer does intend to keep there, and they also intend to maintain at least some presence where Bayer has been doing its own seed development, which is largely out of North Carolina.
Yeah, Jacob, has to still get regulatory approval. Any red flags that people are bringing up this early about some type of trouble with this merger?
Well, I mean, some people that you'll talk to in the agriculture world and elsewhere will say the merger is one big red flag in the sense that this is already a highly consolidated business. The sort of term in the industry is that there is a big six of seed and pesticide companies worldwide, and Monsanto, as things stand now, is the biggest. And you have Dow, and you have DuPont, and you have Syngenta, you have Bayer in there, as well as the German firm BASF, which is a big pesticide producer as well. And so there's people that would argue and have argued for years that it's too consolidated the way that it is. If you proceed with the idea that these mergers, as there's been 3 announced in the last under the last year, all progress, then you'll shrink down. Dow and DuPont will go together. Monsanto and Bayer will go together. It'll be highly concentrated. The question is whether or not in any particular product area, whether these will trip the trigger and require either a divestiture of some sort or some kind of remedy that the companies will have to decide it still makes the deal worthwhile. And they quoted a figure, I think it was probably an estimate yesterday, that they anticipated seeking regulatory approval in 30 different jurisdictions around the world. This is going to get looked at very closely. The Europeans have already responded to concerns amongst at least some of the European Union lawmakers about consolidation in the industry, saying that they were going to vet this thoroughly. That was even before they agreed to a deal. Senator Chuck Grassley up in Iowa, he's holding a hearing next week, as a matter of fact, on this exact topic, asking the question of consolidation and what the impact is for the farmers, for the seed retailers, and for the food system in general.
So it sounds to me, reading between the lines, you're reading between the lines, and if I'm reading between the lines of what you're saying, it sounds to me like this is far from a done deal when it comes to regulators.
They said yesterday that they don't expect to close this until the end of next year. If that gives you any sense of, the thoroughness with which it's going to be examined by the regulators. But the point that Bayer and Monsanto make, and the reason that Bayer sees fit to spend, all of these tens of billions of dollars here is because they think it can be done, and they think they have a good argument to make that much of Bayer's business doesn't overlap with Monsanto's at all, and they say that's true even in the agricultural business. And there's some areas where there's a clear direct competition. And you can look at things like cotton seed. They're both very big cotton seed producers. Canola seed is another one. They both sell a former herbicide that kills a wide range of plants, and that's Roundup on Monsanto's side. Bayer on their side sells a product called glufosinate. And so those are things that are kind of obvious things for an antitrust enforcer to look at, and there's analysts on Wall Street that have more or less already figured that they're going to have to divest some of this, but the companies themselves say it's essentially too early to tell exactly what and where they might have to do things like this.
Jacob Bunge, one more question for you here, and that is, and I apologize if this is too inside or outside, but next to Monsanto is the Danforth Plant Life Centers, which is a research facility.
Yeah.
Is that being there helping Monsanto in this merger? In other words, is the research going to stay here in part because of the Danforth Plant Life Center being so instrumental right next door to Monsanto?
Well, I'm familiar with the Danforth Center and the research that they do there. I would sort of look at it the other way. My understanding has always been that the Danforth Center probably wouldn't be there without Monsanto, as they've donated a fair amount to it over the years, and I believe shared technology and that sort of thing. I think if you were to ask that question of the Bayer folks, who are going to be the ones, of course, calling all of these sorts of shots as to Monsanto's relationships and their obligations and their businesses and so on, I think if you were to ask them this question today, would say it's way too early to tell, for one thing. They don't have their deal done, as the first point they make. But I think more broadly, they might say that they realize the importance of maintaining good relations in not just the communities where they do business, but the places around the world where their technology can potentially help people. And I'm referring here to a lot of the work that the Danforth Center does in developing crops that can help food production in Africa. And so the idea being that Bayer already does these sorts of things on its own. I would have a hard time imagining walking away from all those sorts of things that Monsanto has been working on with various communities or groups over the years.
Yeah, good stuff. Jacob Bunge, our guest, and Jacob Bunge, the agricultural reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Jacob, thank you very much for your time on a busy morning.
Yeah, no problem.